Well, hello again. Sorry about the poor production quality as usual. Unlike a lot of these people, I'm not retired or unemployed. I don't have all day and every day to play around with YouTube videos. So I just do a sort of point and shoot thing that takes, however long it takes. With an absolute minimum of editing, just to get the point across. I think they're good enough to get the point across. Now, this is Senator Tim Burchett, and I do applaud him for what he's doing, for sure. Absolutely support Senator Burchett 100%. I wish I lived in the United States so I could vote for him, because he does seem genuinely determined to get to the bottom of this UAP stuff. Does the United States hold recovered alien spacecraft, etc., etc., etc.? And he seems determined to open doors until he gets to the answers he wants to see. Not the result he wants to see, the answers he wants to see. He wants to know if this is real. Personally, I think that when he does open that final door, he's going to be quite disappointed, because I think he is a bit of a fanboy and he would like it to be true. When he opens that final door and finds that it isn't true, I don't think he's the kind of guy that will keep that a secret. He'll just tell us that it's all a lot of nonsense. Now, this I think is a very good example of why we should not take people's word for a witness's word for a sighting of an alien spacecraft, regardless of whether they're in the military, regardless of how well decorated they are. There's another point. I'll let Senator Burchett make this point in a second, and then I'll show you a few clips that show that this is really not worth a carrot. And then I'll go to another clip of Senator Burchett where looks to me like he's really swallowed the whole UFO story Kool-Aid, because he's talking about energy sources that can save the planet. This is a common theme that runs through all of the UFO fanboys. Ben Emlyn-Jones will say, "Oh, free energy, it's real, and if only they release this information, look at all the good it would do in the world." And there are a lot of reasons why this is complete and utter nonsense. The main reason, of course, being there's no such thing as free energy. Nature doesn't give you anything for nothing. We get solar power. You might consider that to be free, but it's not free for the sun. The sun is converting something like 600 million tonnes of hydrogen into 596 million tonnes of helium and 4 million tonnes of energy every second. So the sun is getting through its hydrogen pretty rapidly, 600 million tonnes a second. Okay, so that's pretty expensive for the sun to produce the sunlight. Going off a bit of a tangent there. Sorry, I'll get back to the point I want to make here. Okay, so here is Senator Tim Burchett describing the three primary witnesses.
Humiliated. But I'll tell you, our three witnesses, they're decorated, and that doesn't combat people. One of the commander, Marine, Navy commander. I mean, good gosh, you're not going to get much tougher than that. And those credentials are impeccable, and they're college educated, and they're not just some knucklehead that just come out. They're not somebody like me that just signed up and is flying some $50 million aircraft. These are the top people in the world. And for them to come forward and to take an oath to say that they're telling the truth and then expose what's going on, to me was pretty cool.
And they
Okay, so Senator Burchett is impressed by their credentials. They're military, they're decorated. He's actually talking about the pilots there. Commander Fravor, I think in particular he's talking about there. I think Graves, although he was a fighter pilot, has actually stated that he's never personally seen an alien, anything he thought was an alien spacecraft or a UAP. A lot like Grush, in fact. Grush has said he hasn't actually seen any of this stuff. He's just repeating what he's been told. So Grush is the primary whistleblower, but I reckon I think he's blowing a dog whistle, because I can't hear anything at all. I'm not hearing anything at all. Okay, so let's just take a look at a couple of clips from Commander Fravor. I'm just going to start this just a little bit earlier than I was going to.
To turn back towards the east, the controller came up and said, "Sir, you're not going to believe this, but that thing is at your cap point, roughly 60 miles away in less than a minute." You can...
Yeah, okay, so there's a couple of things to consider here. Fravor doesn't tell us that when they did rendezvous back at the cap point, there was nothing there. The cap point would have been programmed into the system on the Princeton that had just had this new upgrade. This is the system showing all these glitches with the top UAPs going from the top of the screen to the bottom, the same course day after day after day. So chances are it just temporarily, it was a system glitch that just painted the blip at the target at the cap point, because it had been programmed into the system and it was glitchy software. When they got to the cap point, there was nothing there. The other point to consider, of course, is that Commander Fravor here says that Tic Tac disappeared, and then they came on the radio and said that this thing had appeared at the cap point. They didn't say they had tracked it to the cap point, so we could be talking about two completely different objects, if in fact the object at the cap point did exist. They don't tell us if, when they got to the cap point, the unidentified target was still showing up on the radar when they got to the cap point. When they got to the cap point, there was nothing there. Was it still showing on the radar? They don't tell us that. Okay, I'll go on to the bit that I was initially going to show you. Yeah, I should have just let that play on a bit.
Well, you got the video that you see, that 90-second video.
Okay, so he got the 90-second video. Now, is that the Tic Tac video? Or is that the Go Fast video that he's talking about here? 90-second video. Okay, so the interesting thing is that he says that this took 10 minutes. This whole encounter took 10 minutes. There's a 90-second video. Okay, I think there's a question mark there.
You don't see is the radar tape that was never released, and we don't know where it's at, of the active jamming that the object put on an APG-73 radar, and I can get it.
Okay, so the Tic Tac put some active jamming onto his radar. Now, it's hard to imagine that ET is going to be able to effectively jam the radar. They might be able to, but this suggests to me more like terrestrial adversarial. I think the Tic Tac was probably a lighter than air device launched from a submarine. Alex Dietrich being interviewed by Mick West, and I might show you that clip, a very quick clip where she describes Mick West is pretty good at the interviews, but he's not as aggressive. He sort of sits back, and he's quite a mild interviewer. And I think he does that simply because, you know, if he was as aggressive as I would be, he wouldn't get anybody to interview. I think it's as simple as that. So he would probably like to say the sort of things that I say, but refrains from saying it. That's just a guess, of course. But he was interviewing Alex Dietrich. Alex Dietrich said there was this thing roiling under the water. It was just below the surface. And Mick West says, well, so, you know, what it looked like, you know, and she said, it looked like an aircraft with no wings. And he said, well, and she said, like a 737 sort of size, like an aircraft, and Mick West says, like an aircraft fuselage. And she said, yeah, like an aircraft fuselage, just below the surface. It was a cylinder. Now, an aircraft fuselage without any wings is a cylinder that tapers at each end. That description... That description fits a submarine pretty well, doesn't it? A submarine is a cylinder that tapers at each end. You're more likely to find a submarine just below the surface, something that sort of size and shape, than a 737 without any wings. So I think this Tic Tac was a lighter than air surveillance vehicle. I think it was launched from a submarine, and the submarine was just diving because it realised that these aircraft were coming towards it. And the Tic Tac had already been released. It was too late to do anything about it, and it was already automatically climbing to the altitude where the buoyancy of the gas inside it, because it's a bit lighter than air vehicle, would match the air density outside. So if you look at if he's talking about the Tic Tac where there's all the numbers on the head-up display, is this the bit that you can do a bit of trigonometry and find out that it was actually at 13,800 feet? Now, are we talking about the same video there? Because if it was on its way up, being a lighter than air surveillance vehicle, it may very well be equipped with something that will jam foreign adversarial radars, like American F-18 radars. If it's come from a Russian sub or a Chinese sub, they would know what the frequencies and the pulse repetition rates are for their radars, and they would have something that would effectively jam that, to improve the longevity of their lighter than air intelligence gathering platform. Okay, so that's just one thing that I thought was worth mentioning.
Into modes later if you're interested.
Yeah, okay. So, we're not really interested in the modes. The fact that it could effectively jam it sort of tells us that sort of technologically it was using some sort of effective jamming method. So it would have had to know what the frequencies and the pulse repetition rates were. Okay, let's just move on to the bit I was actually going to show in the first place. Okay, I think this is worth a mention.
It wasn't until 2009 until Jay Stratton had contacted me to investigate. Unbeknownst to all, he was part of the ATIP program.
The ATIP program, which was a hobby program run by Lou Elizondo, apparently. I was watching this other thing, Sydney Green Street, and it might have been Mick West yesterday. And they were saying that this Jay Stratton, that used to run the UAP task force, he's involved with the Skinwalker Ranch as well. And they showed a clip from Skinwalker Ranch where Jay Stratton and Travis Taylor were on their way to investigate something at Skinwalker Ranch. So I think the credibility of this is, almost evaporating in front of our eyes, to be perfectly honest.
In the Pentagon, led by Lou Elizondo. And there was an unofficial official report that came out that's now on the internet.
Unofficial official report from a hobby program. And okay. And Lou Elizondo's boss, was he Jay Stratton, involved with Skinwalker Ranch with Travis Taylor? Really? This is not. This is not. I really wouldn't. I'd take all of this with a very large pinch of salt. This is all. As I said, the credibility of this, I think, is just evaporating in front of our faces.
Years later, I was contacted by the other pilot, Alex Dietrich, and asked if I'd been contacted, and I said no, but I'm willing to talk. I was contacted by Mr. Elizondo, and we talked for a short period of time. He said we'd be in contact. A few weeks after that, I was made aware that Lou had left the Pentagon in protest and joined forces with Tom DeLonge, Chris Mellon, Steve Justice, and others to form Two Stars Academy.
It gets worse and worse and worse, doesn't it, really? I mean, send us your money and we'll build you a starship. You can go and have a look at these little grey fellas. We can run tours, $60 million a ticket. It's all nonsense, this really, isn't it? Okay, let's just get to the point I was going to make initially. Okay, so the TTSA. I mean, how much credibility has the TTSA got, really? And the people involved with the TTSA, don't really need to name them. Now, this is quite interesting. It's this is Lex Fridman or Friedman. And to be honest, this is the worst interview I've ever seen with Commander Fravor. This Lex Fridman character interrupts him all the time. Terrible interviewer. But anyway, let's just get to the important bit.
Right. So, and it's basically, think of a little cube. So they can, and the whole sky is made.
So Commander Fravor here is telling us how he was sort of vectored to go and have a look at the Tic Tac.
Of all these little cubes. And they're looking, so if you're inside a cube with something and you're both inside the same little cube, then the radar can only see one thing. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So they call merge plot. Well, when we say merge plot to us, it means he's right around, something's around you, get your head out. So we're not looking at radar scopes anymore and the WIZZOs can look, but everyone, it's heads out. When they say merge plot, you're done looking at your displays inside, you're doing this, and you're trying to find it. So as we look out to the right and you look high and low, because he could be anywhere from the surface all the way up. Now keep in mind the ship is like probably 60 miles away, so it can't see the surface, and you can do your standard radar horizon calculation and go, hey, it's the thing is 40 feet off the water, the panel.
Yeah, now I did this calculation, and I'm sure there are plenty of people out there that will correct me if I'm wrong. Now remember, Fravor here has said that the Tic Tac was really low to the surface, and he's just described that the ship was 60 miles away. It's using a UHF or microwave radar, and it can't see beyond the horizon. Okay, now the horizon at the surface is only about 10 miles, I think, something like that. But as something increases in altitude, the horizon gets further and further away. If you see what I mean. Actually, I can show you exactly what I mean. Where is that graphic? This handy graphic. There you go. There's a handy graphic there that shows you, how far it is, the radar from the horizon, and then if you see there's a tall, something high off the ground, and the horizon becomes much further away. So that's sort of how that works. And this is where I got the calculation from, so I'm hoping it's correct. To calculate the distance to the horizon, multiply the square root of the antenna height in feet by 1.23. To calculate the maximum range that you can detect a target with your radar, add the square root of the antenna height to the square root of the target height and multiply by 1.23. Okay, so now I did that, and I looked at a picture of the Princeton. Where is that? Get all these things here. Okay, so if you look at the Princeton, the radar antennas, it's not a rotating radar, is these panels here. These panels here. There's one there and there's one there. The computer stitches it all together, which is why it's sort of prone to software glitches. So I said, okay, well, this is a Seahawk. All right, this is a Seahawk. And the Seahawk is about 65 feet long. And if we use something, we use I actually used a cable tie, just a small cable tie, just to sort of roughly gauge the length of the Seahawk, and then stood that up against the image of the ship with the antennas. And the antennas are about 20 metres from the surface, about 65 feet, okay, these antennas here. They're about 65 feet from the surface. The ship is 60 miles away, as Commander Fravor has told us. Now, this being the case, according to my calculations, please feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. I don't do very much calculating these days. Okay, it would have to be the target in order for the radar to be able to see it. The target would have to be at 1,700 feet altitude. If it was lower than 1,700 feet, it wouldn't be detectable at 60 miles. So, yeah, that's right, isn't it? I think so. So the square root of 1,700, and you add that to the square root of 65, and then you times that by 1.23, and you get your 60 miles. So the object would have had to have been 1,700 feet in the air to be detectable by this radar 60 miles away. So it's not close to the surface, is it? Okay, let's just get back to the story.
really see, there are radars that can see around the curve, but let's just say that it can't at this time. So you go, where's it at? So
yeah, so basically what it is as I showed you that graphic, that graphic there. So Fravor is telling us that the radar can't see across the curvature of the Earth. Okay, so if it can't see across the curvature of the Earth, the object is going to have to be to be detectable at. So it can detect. Gone. Where's the pen? Gone. Okay, so it can detect something 625 feet high. At this distance here. This is just an example. I don't know that this antenna is 20 meters from the surface. This is just a sort of rough guide to give you an idea of how it works. So as the ship is 60 miles away from the target. God, where's the bloody... Here we go. It's getting further and further down here. The further it's away from the target, it's further down this curve here. Which means the target is going to have to be higher on this side of the curve here for it to be able to see it. Yeah. So at 60 miles, the Tic Tac is going to have to be 1,700 feet in the air. Okay, let's move on to the next bit. Okay, so remember, he's just told us that, there's a calculation you can do because of the curvature of the Earth. The ship is 60 miles away. And I just did that quick calculation, and the object's got to be at least 1,700 feet in the air to be detectable from a distance of 60 miles.
Around, we see, it's a clear day. There's no clouds, and there's no white caps. It's just a calm... It's actually a perfect day. If you own a sailboat, it was at 5 to 10 knots of wind, and you just want to kind of go out there, and you're not going to get beat up and have white water.
Sorry about this. It's going to be too hard to edit out.
It was the perfect day to own a sailboat.
How many miles out do you see? Like 7? Like you see, it's a clear day.
Yeah, this is not relevant really. Okay. So let's forget the bit about the sailing boat. It's not really relevant. Sorry about that.
You can go out when it's high tide, and any one of the coasts. You can go out here off of Boston and go, hey, at low tide I can see those rocks, and at high tide I can't see the rocks are covered, but there will be white water around those rocks. You'll be able to tell there's something underneath the surface. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that's what it was. We don't see an object because there's all kinds of, they saw another craft below the water. We didn't see anything below the water. We just saw white water. But the white...
So now he is saying that they didn't see anything below the water. They just saw the white water. So Alex Dietrich is saying that they saw a thing that looked like a 737 fuselage without any wings under the water, which sounds to me a lot like a submarine. But Fravor is saying it didn't see anything under the water. They only saw the white water.
White water, and I like to shape it. You can say it was across. I say it's about the size of a 737. So it looks like if you took a 737, put it about 15, 20 feet below the water, so the waves breaking over the top, and you're going to get white water where the plane is at, you'd see this kind of shape. So it looks like a cross.
Okay. So now the 737 has wings. Yeah, this I'll share a bit with Alex Dietrich a little bit later on, but this story is all over the place, isn't it? I mean, how long ago was this? This was 2 years ago. Okay. 2 years ago. Right, okay. So we've got the now the 737 below the surface that he can't see, remember, is producing a white water in the shape of a cross. Okay. Goodness. I have better things to do with my Sunday afternoon, to be honest.
So as we're looking down off the right side, the backseater in the other airplane, Jim, says, this is that talking in partials again, he says, hey, Skipper, do you? And that's about what he gets out of his mouth. And I go, what the hell is that? In a nice...
Do you see that, essentially, is what he's
So
saying?
we see the white water. And
you can see he's getting fed up with Lex Fridman interrupting him now.
that's what draws our eyes down there. Otherwise, we'd have never seen it. So we see this
I would
white
have loved
water,
to see the look on your face when you see that. Like,
And then we-
what?
Will you just shut up and let the man speak, for goodness sake?
see this little white tic tac because we're about 20,000 feet above it, and it's doing.
Yeah, now this is interesting. You've seen the little tic tac, and it's sort of blowing around in the breeze because it's a balloon. Now he's looking down on this from 20,000 feet. Now remember, we've already said that the ship wouldn't be able to see it on its radar unless it was at 1,700 feet. So it's not low to the, can't be low to the water, can it? And the other thing too is that I've had a look at, and I'll show you an example on Google Earth. He said it's about as big as a hornet. It's about 40 foot long. Well, hornet's actually a bit longer than 40 feet. It's about 55 feet long, maybe 50 feet long. But I had a look at a hornet sitting on the ground at an Air Force base on Google Earth. And I zoomed out until my eye altitude was 6,000 metres, which is approximately 20,000 feet. And I really couldn't see it. So how you can see any detail on something from 20,000 feet in the air, a 40-foot long object from 20,000 feet in the air, I think that in itself is quite astonishing. I'll give you an example of that. I think I'll see if I can find an aircraft on the ground, and we'll look at it from an altitude of 20,000 feet on Google Earth and see how it looks.
And it's going basically north south and then east west north, and it's abrupt. It's very abrupt. So it's not like a helicopter. If a helicopter's going sideways and it goes it's going sideways left and it goes right, and what it'll do is it's got a speed, it slows down because there's inertia,
Yeah.
and it stops and then it goes back the other way. This thing's not. It's like left right with no.
So moving in ways that doesn't feel intuitive to you
At all.
of the things you've seen in the past.
So as a pilot, the first thing you think is it's a helicopter,
Right.
So you go, oh, what is? Because when we see it, it's moving, we're like, oh, helicopter. So the first thing you look for to see if it's a helicopter when they're doing that, because usually when they get down there towards that 50 feet, you'll get rotor wash. You see it.
Now he's talking about it being 50 feet off the ground, off the surface, okay? So it's gone from 1,700 feet down to 50 feet now. And he's 20,000 feet in the air. If he was looking down at a helicopter from 20,000 feet, would he really see rotor wash?
In the movies, when the helicopter's by the water, water comes up the sides because the downdraft, like a thunderstorm will do that. It pushes the air down and then it has to come up the sides. So you see it and you go, well, there's no rotor wash. What is that thing? So by this time we're driving around. So if we were at the 6 o'clock, we're driving around towards that 9 o'clock position, and we're just watching this thing, and it's still pointing north south, and it's going left right, and it's kind of moving around the object. And if I had to say it biased itself, it was biased towards the bottom.
Yeah, I don't think the rest of this is relevant. You would have heard all this before. But basically, I think it was spotted on the radar at 1,700 feet because it had been released from a submarine. It was a lighter than air surveillance vehicle. It was on its way up to its buoyancy altitude of 13,800 feet, which is where, if you do a bit of trigonometry from the F-18 head-up display, that's the altitude it puts it at. I think it was climbing up there fairly rapidly. They're probably not used to flying around practically stationary or very slow-moving objects. When he's travelling at over 300 knots, he's probably going to make the other object look like it's moving quite fast, I suspect. So that's just my take on it. I think we'll just move on. Okay, now this may not be a really great example because the aircraft's grey and the ground is grey. It's not like looking at a white. To be fair, it's not like looking at a white object against a blue ocean, but he did say there was white caps around. But here is a Hornet, F-18 Hornet, sitting on the ground at an Air Force base in Australia. Okay, now the eye altitude is 151 metres here. Okay, that's how it's going to look. If I was in an aircraft 151 metres in the air, that is how it's going to look to me. Okay, so let's just see how that's going to look if I was in an aircraft at 20,000 feet. Okay. That's 1,500 feet. Kookaburras arcing up outside. Okay, so there's the altitude that Commander Fravor was at. That's 6,000 and a bit metres, so 20,000 feet. Pretty hard to see that Hornet, isn't it? Where the hell's it gone? So, okay, so it's up here. There's the circle appearing where it is. You can't really sort of make anything out until you get down to about 850 metres, 2,400 feet maybe. As I say, this is not a great example. Actually, what would be a better example would be to find a 40-foot sailing boat on Google Earth on the ocean and then zoom out to 20,000 feet. But certainly, you know, if you look at a Hornet, which you said was about the same size, same length, and then you go out, okay, that's about 1,000 feet. 3,000 feet. You can barely see it now, can you? Yeah. What's that? 10,000 feet. Yeah. And there's 20,000 feet. Okay, there's 20,000 feet. And can you see it? Maybe I'll see if I can find a better example. But if I can't, let's move on. I don't know whether this is going to be a better example or not, but this is a local boat harbour to where I am. This here is a harbour. As seen from 20,000 feet. Okay, high altitude. 20,000 feet, okay. You can't see a great deal. It doesn't help that it says Hillary's Boat Harbour across it, but if I zoom in, yeah, before you can actually see detail of a, now these are, I don't know, 40 foot. I would say these are probably bigger than 40 foot, these boats. You know, that's at 100, that's at 300 feet. To see any detail at all, you know, that's 1,500 feet. You can't really see any detail there, can you? That's 6,000 feet. So how you could see, hang on, that's a bit too high. You want to be about there. There we go. That's about 20,000 feet. 6,000 metres. You can't really, I mean, those boats we were just looking at, are here. These little tiny specks. And they're probably, I'm going at arm's length here, that's why I'm shaking, so it's not that it's not that I'm suffering from withdrawal symptoms or anything. Okay, so it's very difficult to see the small boats at all, let alone see any detail on them. So you could say that it had none of this and none of that, none of the other is beyond me, quite frankly. Here we go. Here we go. Here we go. There we go. And I reckon every single one of those boats is a fair bit larger than 40 feet. Okay. All right. On with the next bit. Now, I think this is quite interesting because they're saying, you know, it's a danger to aviation. All these alien spacecraft flying around, you know, they're flying around all over the place. The sky is full of them. You know, it's raining alien spacecraft. Small percentage of them crash. But yeah, listen to this.
This incident the only UAP event that you encountered while you were a pilot?
Yes, it was.
Okay, so that was the only UAP incident he experienced while he was a pilot. He was a Navy pilot for 16 years, I think. So that tells you how dangerous, how much of a danger they are to aviation, and how much of a danger are they to general aviation? Well, as far as I know, never in the history of aviation has any aircraft collided with an alien spacecraft, be it military or civilian. I don't think there is. There is one recorded event where someone has categorically said this aircraft has collided with an alien spacecraft. Any survivors from the aircraft, of course, would have got a Nobel Prize for being able to provide tangible proof of ET, not only being out there, but being here and smashing up their nice aeroplane. Okay, next. Okay, just there's a couple of short bits from Mick West's video here. I hope he doesn't mind. I'm sure I'll find out quick enough if he does. Now, this I think is quite interesting. I think this is the bit where Alex Dietrich describes the seeing something in the water or just below the surface.
About it. Okay, so second paragraph, Fast Eagles 110 and 100.
She's reading an account here that I think Mick West has sent her, and he's just asking her about that account.
I could not find.
I can't remember if she said that whether it was an official account or not, or whether she could validate it or not. She probably couldn't validate it as being authentic or in every detail, something like that.
Find the unidentified airborne contact at location given by Princeton. So that is referring to when Princeton is seeing our radar points on their radar scope, what is called merge plot. So as they see the range countdown, there's a point at which they say merge plot, and that tells us as air crew, as we get closer, to start some different radar mechanics with our own.
Now remember, for the Princeton to be able to say to Alex Dietrich and David Fravor here, merge plot, the Princeton must have been able to see the object on its radar. The Princeton was 60 miles away, so because of the curvature of the Earth, the object would have had to have been an altitude of approximately 1,700 feet in order for the Princeton to be able to see it at that distance.
Aircraft radar, and then also our different scan patterns, looking outside more and trying to pick up a visual so that we can merge and potentially engage with this.
Okay.
So
now remember, they're at 20,000 feet at this point, so it's going to be very difficult to see something that's something small at 1,700 feet.
Again, we're skating outside and looking, and this is when since Fast Eagles spotted a large unidentified object in the water at 14:30. So I would say, this is suggesting that there was, in fact, something there, an object.
It's suggesting there was an object there. Okay.
There was churning and there was something there, but it was very hard to tell. Was it sinking? Was it coming up? Was it a reef? Where the water was sort of breaking over it.
I don't watch a lot of Mick West stuff, but I think this is the first time I've seen him looking miffed.
But it's hard to tell whether it was related to what we saw then shortly thereafter, or whether it was unrelated and just happened to be in the same area. but it was that churning water that directed all of our eyes into that same spot, and how I at least picked up the visual of the Tic Tac. Pilot saw steam, smoke churning around object. So I did not see steam, smoke. I did see churning water and water disturbance, sort of roiling. But I wonder where the steam and smoke came from.
So that's where it's saying like pilot saw and then pilot saw. I mean, do you recognize any of this as stuff that you said to somebody in your debrief, or do you think this is from the other pilots?
It might be a compilation. Again, this is the first time I'm reading this,
Okay.
and so
Now, you've got to bear in mind she's reading this many years after the event as well.
could be. I don't know. I don't know where these specific details are coming from. And it could be that one of the other 3 people involved saw something that looks steamy or smoky coming up. Pilot describes object initially as resembling a downed airliner, also stated that it was much larger than a submarine. So I would...
Okay. Again, that's another discrepancy, isn't it? Much larger than a submarine, yet they described it as a 737 fuselage without wings, or somebody does. Was it Alex Dietrich that described it as that? Certainly some submarines are really quite large. Be considerably bigger than a 737 fuselage.
I would say that it was about the size of a large aircraft fuselage. So it wasn't a pure cross, but that my heart sank, and I thought perhaps we were on scene for search and rescue for something that went down, because that initial shape and size was like, oh shit, an aircraft went down.
So
here.
You didn't see the wings of an aircraft, just like what looked like a fuselage?
Right. So it would have been sort of that oblong.
Right.
So she's gone from not seeing an object to now seeing something that looked like an aircraft fuselage. And as I said earlier, aircraft fuselage is more or less a cylinder, tapers at each end, which is an awful lot like the shape of a submarine, isn't it? So I think this. I'm pretty sure this was going to be a lighter than air surveillance vehicle launched from a adversarial country submarine. That's what this is all about.
Shape. That's the shape of the water that was churning.
Yeah.
But I didn't see the clear. Yeah, sort of. The water bottle.
Like, yeah, we know it's like a 737 without wings.
I should really invest in some Tic Tac.
Yeah. Okay. So we've established that it was the shape suggested to her an aircraft fuselage without wings, which is basically, well, if you're looking down from an aircraft and you see something just below the surface of the ocean that looks like an aircraft fuselage without wings, are you going to think it's an aircraft fuselage without wings, or are you going to think that's a submarine? I'd be thinking it's a submarine. Okay, let's just move on. Okay, I'm going to... I'll leave a link to this video below so you can watch it in its entirety, of course. It's always worth having a look at Mick West's stuff. And this other guy, John Greenwald, the Black Vault, is worth having a look at as well. And so I don't look at an awful lot of it because I think we're on the same page most of the time, and Mick West says pretty much the same as what I do, what I say. But John Greenwald, very, very interesting channel, the Black Vault. I'll leave you a link to that, and I might even show you a clip from that as well. He puts an awful lot of effort into getting to the bottom of this, an awful lot of effort. And he came up with something quite interesting. Anyway, I'm sort of going off a bit of a tangent here. This is the bit that I thought was worth including, because Alex Dietrich says that her encounter with the Tic Tac, her visual observation of the Tic Tac, was only for about 10 seconds.
If he's
Now, yeah, so where I was going with that, sorry, Mick West is on the same page as myself with this. He doesn't say what I said. He thinks it might be a balloon that's come adrift from somewhere, but I haven't heard him say that it was speculate that it could be a lighter than air surveillance vehicle launched from a adversarial submarine. I haven't heard him say that. I don't know whether he does anywhere, but we're on the same sort of page. I think he's going to say a similar sort of thing here.
he's going around something that's in the middle of a circle. It's not
because it's not moving or moving very slowly. It may give the impression that it's moving very fast simply because of the speed of the observer. You know, David Fravor was doing over 300 knots, so it might look like it's going fast. This is what I was saying earlier.
really moving, but he thinks it's twice as big. It would look exactly like he's going around it like this, and then when he cuts across the circle, he thinks it's over here. He cuts across, and then it looks like it's whizzed off because he thinks it's done this when really he's just done this. But obviously that's very speculative, and your perspective, of course, is from above from the same thing. But then you only saw the 10 seconds of it, which to you seemed like a very intense encounter. Yeah. And so my theory, and stop me if this sounds completely crazy, is that you're seeing kind of like a similar illusion from different angles, like because you're just getting this 10-second brief encounter with no longer frame of reference, and he's got this more continued illusion of distance. So what I'm doing here is, with talking to you about it, is trying to get more info about whether that's even possible at all.
Yeah.
Something just fell off the shelf. Sorry. That's strange. So,
Defies the laws of physics.
Yeah, it's a poltergeist.
Defies the laws of physics.
So, does that just sound ridiculous to you? That theory?
It doesn't. And again, I'm not wedded to any particular theory. I have.
So Alex Dietrich here says that her encounter with this Tic Tac sighting only lasted for 10 seconds. David Fravor says that it lasted for 5 minutes. Now that's a huge discrepancy, isn't it? Now, of course, it's not uncommon for men and women to share the same experience, and for the woman to say that the duration of the experience was 10 seconds, and for the man to say the duration of the experience was 5 minutes. But in this context, there is a huge discrepancy, isn't it? David Fravor says 5 minutes, and Alex Dietrich only saw it for 10 seconds. Okay, let's move on. Okay, so we've just heard Alex Dietrich saying that, first of all, saying that she didn't see an object at all, and then going on to say that, yes, it was probably something that looked like an aircraft fuselage without wings just below the surface. So these fighter pilots and military officers, they're no different to anybody else, really. The story changes. They make assumptions just like anybody else. And here's Commander Fravor telling us that it lasted 5 minutes from where he was sitting.
It wasn't a weather balloon. It wasn't a flare. It was an actual object that we tracked. We looked at for somewhere around 5 minutes before it rapidly accelerated.
So they looked at it for roughly 5 minutes before it accelerated. Okay, so he's actually saying there that there's 4 people in the 2 F-18s that were looking at the. Where's this going now?
Yeah, when we there was 2 of us.
So he's saying that there's 4 people in the aircraft that saw it for 5 minutes. Yeah, Alex Dietrich was one of the pilots of one of the 4 people, and she says that she only saw something for about 10 seconds. Yeah, so Senator Burchett saying, these are highly decorated military people, they've got all these XYZ backgrounds. I think personally is meaningless. They are people. People make mistakes, people make assumptions. People will see if they're primed to see something, then that's what they're looking for. Now, just previously, David Fravor here said that they tracked it from 0 feet up to 20,000 feet. Yeah, if you do what David Fravor himself suggested, and you do the calculation for the radar with the Princeton 60 miles away, it couldn't see the thing at 0 feet. The merge point would have had to have been where they were vectored onto it and they merged with it. It would have had to have been at least 1,700 feet from the surface. Otherwise, the Princeton radar wouldn't have been able to see it. Okay, and of course David Grush apparently suffers with autism. Now, I don't know very much about autism, but I did Google, can autism affect your critical thinking ability? And apparently it can. So it may well be that David Grush, because he has impaired critical thinking ability, has just swallowed all this guff that he's been fed by all these sort of legacy UFO piffle peddlers, and he's just swallowed it hook, line and sinker. And I think that's what's happened. And as I said at the beginning, I think Senator Burchett, when he finally gets to that last door, and he's doing a great job, by the way. There was him and 3 others, and I might actually include that in this video, have actually signed this petition to get these people subpoenaed, which is exactly what he should be doing. This is what we want to see. We want to get to the bottom of it. Is it real? Is it not? Does the US have crashed alien spacecraft or not? Strongly suspect not. But he's got a petition together so that they're going to get these people subpoenaed. And he's going to open some doors and he's going to look at it. And I think that when he opens the final door, he's going to find there's nothing there. But at least we'll know. We'll know for sure and certain, won't we? Okay, let's just go on to the other bit I was going to talk about. Now, this is the bit at the beginning that I said was a bit disappointing, and that I think Senator Burchett here has just swallowed the UFO fanboy Kool-Aid.
Yeah, why would this be something that the government wants to hide from us?
It's power. Why do they hide the Kennedy assassination? Nobody's even alive during that. It's arrogance. It's corruption. Imagine this, though, if the Tic Tac, just look at there's multiple of these Tic Tac type sightings, but imagine if you had something like that that had no heat trail, no heat signature, you had that energy capability. What would that do? I tell you, it would put the Pentagon out of business. The people that get us into wars and get our boys and girls killed on a regular basis and make billionaires more money, it put them out of business. We wouldn't.
Well, that's true. I mean, if you had a military aircraft with those sort of capabilities, if it was all real, no one's gonna take you on, are they? Because they're going to get obliterated, which is why no government will keep it secret. It's the best deterrent you could imagine.
Be over in the Middle East, it would make oil worthless to some degree. I mean, we still need. Yeah,
the making oil worthless argument is this is UFO fanboy stuff. Because what he's alluding to is that they are propelled by free energy. Free energy. And of course, there's no such thing. A lot of these UFO people say, oh, if only they'd admit they had these things, we could use the technology they use for their propulsion, this free energy, and it would solve all these problems in the third world and everything else. What they don't take into account is, okay, first of all, it's not real, it's science fiction, okay? But let's just assume for a second it is real. You're still going to need a device to convert the free energy into an energy that you can use. So you're still going to need a box in your house that's going to absorb this free energy, and it's going to convert it into, your 240 volt mains or your 220 volt mains or your 110 volt mains, 50, 60 cycle mains, whatever it is, whatever sort of power that you need to run your house, this box is going to have to convert the energy, this free energy, into a form of energy that you can use. So all these companies would be selling these boxes. They'd be selling maintenance contracts for these boxes. There'd be lots of people repairing these boxes when they go wrong. There's hardly any difference between this imaginary free energy and solar power. Because solar power, you have to have solar panels that convert the light into electricity. Then you have to have a means of converting the electricity that the solar panels produce into a form of electricity that's useful for you. Okay, if you use DC electricity, you just need some sort of regulator. Regulates your battery charging and all that sort of stuff. If you've got AC, then you're going to need an inverter. But you're still going to need these these other pieces of equipment if it was free energy. If it wasn't light coming from the sun falling on solar panels and having these other units that are going to convert that energy into useful energy that you can use in your house, if it was free energy, you're still going to have something that's going to collect it and then convert it into an energy that can be used. So no one's assassinating electric car innovators, are they? Musk hasn't been assassinated. He's selling loads of electric cars. Electric cars are selling in Europe. So the days of oil for powering cars is numbered. Even though I don't think battery-powered EVs is the future, to be honest. But they'll be electric, but they won't be battery-powered. But all this is going to finish oil, isn't it? So there's no reason to keep it secret because you think it's going to end the oil business. Because we're ending interest in oil as it is. And free energy, not real. You're going to need equipment to absorb the free energy, convert it into something you can use. Just as we absorb the energy from the sun and convert it into energy we can use. What's the difference? You don't pay for sunlight, do you? I mean, they say, this would solve all the problems in the third world. You could do it now. Go out there now with a ship full of solar panels and batteries. Every mud hut could have a 50-inch colour television with surround sound, powered from the sun. No problem. But nobody does that, do they? It'd be the same thing if free energy was real. No one's going to be interested in doing that in the third world. Anyway. Now, I just want to include one last thing that I saw this morning, and that's from the Black Vault, John Greenwald's channel. And I thought it was very interesting, so I'm going to show you, and I'll leave a link to that as well so you can watch that in its entirety. Okay, this is from this morning. I'll watch this. This is the UAP hearing, what's happened since, the Black Vault. And as I said before, this guy is a serious researcher, this fella. So he's very well worth a look. Okay.
One of the other updates, and then I'll get to some of your questions here for those who are watching on the.
This is only going to be a short clip. I'm not going to rip off too much of this video if he doesn't mind.
Behind the scenes live stream of this is a action by members of Congress. This was really encouraging for me to see, simply because, look, despite my skepticism of some of Grush's claims, I believe that the witness testimony from Ryan Graves and David Fravor was solid. But again, despite my skepticism of some of the more elaborate claims by David Grush, I had feared that after that hearing, it would just kind of deflate like a balloon, pardon the pun. And, you might still have Tim Burchett out there and Anna Paulina Luna talking about it. But who else was going to jump on board? And to my pleasant surprise, there was a letter that was sent to Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy, by Matt Gaetz, Anna Paulina Luna, Tim Burchett, and Jared Moskowitz to push for a House Oversight and Accountability Committee, a special select committee on UAP with subpoena power and everything. So
excellent, absolutely spot on. So it's brilliant that these people are pushing for this. Absolutely brilliant, I think.
Since they were looking to create a new committee based just on one effort to figure out the truth behind UAP, they would have subpoena power, they could go out and get the information that they need.
They would have subpoena power. This is exactly what's needed to get to the bottom of this. And I think that once this comes to fruition, I think it will, they'll get their subpoena power. They'll subpoena all these people that have been piffle peddling all these science fiction stories for years, if not decades. And these 4 people here will find out the truth. And so will we all. And I strongly suspect that truth will be very, very disappointing for the UFO fanboys. I don't think it's going to lead to disclosure. It's going to lead to the disclosure that they really won't be able to deny, and that is that after all this investigation, the subpoenas, there is no tangible evidence to support ET visiting Earth. I think that's where this is going. Now, I'll just show you one more clip from this same video, and we'll call it a day. Now, again, this is John Greenwald from the Black Vault, and he's come across this, I don't know if it's a letter to anybody. I think he said he found it on LinkedIn, or somebody found it on LinkedIn. It's from Dr. Kirkpatrick, who runs Arrow. And, of course, Dr. Kirkpatrick is saying, really, what on earth is going on? They're not aware of any of this stuff. So let's just watch a bit of this, a couple of minutes of this.
Now, let me highlight just a few things here on what to take away from it. Obviously, the first line of him saying that it was not representative of any official or IC positions, well, that's clear. This, in my opinion, was kind of unorthodox, especially the way he released it.
Yeah, that's this document.
Simply because they normally stay fairly quiet. But clearly, Dr. Kirkpatrick was pretty upset over what was being alleged and decided to take it into his own hands, not wait for any official Pentagon statement.
So the guy that runs Arrow is pretty upset over what he saw. So he obviously thinks it's a load of rubbish as well.
And put this out on LinkedIn. He knew it must...
Or it doesn't offer any evidence of ET visiting, I should say.
Have gotten out, or it would get out, or maybe that was the intent. I've checked LinkedIn. I couldn't find it, again, without being connected directly to him. So what's up with that? Did he just do it for those that he wanted to share with privately, quote unquote privately?
Yeah, I'd say probably, because I doubt Dr. Kirkpatrick is expecting to spend the rest of his life running Arrow. And if people are looking at him for doing other work for them, it's not going to make him look great if they think he's associated with the sort of stuff that was said during the hearing, especially from Mr. Grush.
With his followers, but I mean, clearly he thought he would know anyway that this would leak out. But regardless, it's not an official position, but clearly he's pretty upset. He also...
And I would be too, I think, in his position.
States, I'm also absolutely committed to transparency on both the historical mission and the operational mission. Well, here's my reaction to this, to Dr. Kirkpatrick, which may actually not be fully his doing. But the DOD as a whole is absolutely not committed to transparency on this issue, not only with their historical mission or their operational mission, but to be honest with you, it's a broad stroke now denial of all UAP information. And the root of all of this is Dr. Kirkpatrick's office. So if he truly was committed to transparency, and maybe he personally is, the DOD and his office is not.
Yeah, but probably a lot of that is to do with the actual technology used by the military. They don't want to say that they can spot these objects at this certain size, at this certain altitude, at this distance and all this. They don't really want that information out there.
So what can, if anything, can he do about it? I don't have an answer to that. But what I can say is that the root of that secrecy, he stands right by it. Meaning he is right there in the thick of it. So if he is committed to that transparency, hopefully we will see that. Because I think
hopefully we will.
The hearings past that Dr. Kirkpatrick played a role in, or the one prior that spoke about the mission to investigate UAP, it is very, very, very clear and evident that they are not committed to that at all. He also goes on to state allegations by its witnesses of retaliation, to include physical assault and hints of murder, are extraordinarily serious, which is why law enforcement is a critical member of the AARO team, specifically to address and take swift action should anyone come forward with such claims. Here's how I took away from this, because the law enforcement, for those who aren't aware, the law enforcement exemption, which is B7 under the Freedom of Information Act, is now being utilized 100% across the board on AARO/UAP related requests. Now, AARO is not a law enforcement arm of the DoD. They are not a group within a law enforcement agency. So how can they get away with that? Now, I've done a full video breakdown, so if you're curious about what tactic they're using right now, check it out, because I think that it's really of interest for those who follow the secrecy, but also may have a false representation of what the transparency currently is. And the short of it, without going through the whole story again, is that they claim that if they were to reveal any type of either interview transcript or list of interviews or anything like that, that it would reveal law enforcement techniques or interfere in a law enforcement investigation. Now, it's my point of view that that is a 100% bunk argument. And I can tell you a couple of the topics that were denied were the interviews with Robert Jacobs, with Robert Solis, obviously much more historical. Remember that historical mission part of his statement there? It was much more geared towards the historical aspect of what they're collecting with incidents from the 1960s. Yet they claimed that those interviews were exempt under FOIA B7, exemption B7, which was that law enforcement exemption.
Maybe they just couldn't be bothered to deal with it. It might be as simple as that. They might just have had enough of all these requests to see all this old UFO information, and they've just used that as a sort of get out of my face response, maybe.
What was also denied were specific AARO case numbers. I actually just picked them at random. Last year, I got a listing of all of the AARO case numbers, which was pretty interesting to get. I mean, they didn't reveal places or anything like that, but rather file numbers. And so I went after 5 random numbers. All 5 were considered exempt. I can also tell you a couple that I have not announced for no other reason other than that the evidence for me was there that they were doing these blanket denials. But I even went to communications between AARO and Dr. Gary Nolan. And I also went through a couple other cases trying to figure out who was AARO talking to and who was giving them information. And yet all of those as well were denied. UAPX, the organization, which I believe is openly admitted to.
UAPX, isn't that the company that was started by Kevin Day, the radar operator on the Princeton, that was doing the aircraft, who vectored David Fravor and Alex Dietrich towards the Tic Tac? I'm pretty sure that's his outfit, isn't it? He set up an outfit and spends most of his time bobbing around on a ship off the coast looking for flying saucers. And disappointingly, he's had dreams about the Earth being destroyed and the ecology, the sort of stories that you hear from aerial school kids, and a lot of these other UFO interactees. Supposed interactees, which I think is a little disappointing. Kevin Day, of course, also said, in his own words, I showed him saying it in a video, that he had his own opinion on what it was all about, but he didn't want to tell that. He didn't want to give his opinion because he thought it would destroy the credibility of the story. So what does that tell you?
Talking to AARO, they posted, I believe that they had posted that on the internet. I was going through those communications too, to figure out, okay, what is AARO taking seriously? Who are they taking seriously? What are they talking about? All of it, 100% exempt. So back to
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe if they're talking to UAPX, I mean, are they talking to MUFON and all these other sort of people? I mean, if they released that information that they were talking to these sort of organisations, you know, TTSA maybe, is the public perception of that going to be, okay, zero credibility here, new business? So until they've got anything of substance, they're going to just deny everything. Maybe deny access to everything, because people will just be poking them with a stick all the time. Maybe.
Dr. Kirkpatrick's statement here, and the fact that he was talking about how law enforcement is a critical member of the Arrow team, the last part of this was interesting to me. Should anyone come forward with such claims? So it's like nobody has yet. And
that is interesting. That is interesting. That's a very good point.
That brings me to the next part of this, because some of you may say, well, wait a minute, Grush has put those people that have alleged such things in contact, he's put them in contact with the proper authorities. Now, we can assume that maybe that's not Arrow, because Dr. Kirkpatrick says the central source of those allegations has refused to speak with Arrow. So
that's interesting, isn't it? So Dr. Kirkpatrick is saying that Grush has refused to speak with Arrow. David Grush says that he's spoken to Dr. Kirkpatrick, but Dr. Kirkpatrick doesn't want to follow up on anything he has to say. Well, both can't be true, can they? I'm sort of leaning towards the Arrow guy telling the truth, because I think if David Grush did put all this in as some sort of official report, they would have to act on it. They would have to look into it. Presumably they could subpoena the people that he's talking about. And then it would all be over, wouldn't it? Then it would all be over. So I don't think David Grush could really do that. But it's interesting. It's an interesting contradiction, isn't it?
Dr. Kirkpatrick get wind of what was going on and he reached out and they refused. Did they make contact with Dr. Kirkpatrick? He tried to set something up, they backed out. I don't know. There's a lot of variables there that I don't think have been announced yet. But that's a weird kind of development, to where if Arrow has a law enforcement member of their team, whomever that is, I'm not sure if that would be FBI or what, I don't think it's beyond what I just read here ever been revealed. But regardless, it's there. Are they not confident that Arrow or Dr. Kirkpatrick can take action? And if that's true, then does that mean the law enforcement member of their team is tainted? And if that's true, then you're going to just start opening these allegations up more and more and more, to where then you just can't trust anybody. So,
yeah, I think it's interesting that Dr. Kirkpatrick wasn't actually at the hearing, was he? Because then he could have just said, okay, Mr. Grush, when you're telling everybody you came to see me, when and where was it? Because I have no recollection of that meeting.
So again, I'm not endorsing Dr. Kirkpatrick's kind of stance here, but if he's got a law enforcement member of his team, why aren't they talking to him? So it was a very interesting, if true, allegation that whomever Grush is referring to refuses to talk. The other interesting part of this, if true, the subcommittee whose questions and
it probably means whoever Dr. Kirkpatrick is referring to is refusing to talk. Grush is not refusing to talk, is he? He's talking everywhere he can. He does need to get a real whistle, though, and get rid of that dog whistle, because I can't hear anything.
Oversight duties are irreproachable and genuine need of answers, has never asked Arrow for an update. Why not? Arrow briefs the Defense and Intel committees regularly, according to Dr. Kirkpatrick, so why didn't this other committee either confer with those others that do get briefings? Maybe they did, I'm not sure at this point. Or why didn't they just contact Arrow and at least get their side? So those were, again, all if true, were very interesting perspectives from Dr. Kirkpatrick, so I can understand that he's kind of getting, blindsided and raked through the coals a little bit. And please let me stress, I'm not endorsing his message, but rather just put yourself in his shoes. They're having this hearing and blasting his office, yet they never even once contacted him.
Yeah, okay. Now I'm running out of time on my camera here. So I just want to get to another bit, which is, here. And hopefully, this is, I think,
Today's hearing
worth hearing.
Ever worked for Arrow or was ever a representative to Arrow, contrary to statements made in testimony usable. Lastly, also to be clear, none of the whistleblowers from yesterday's hearing ever worked for Arrow or was ever a representative to Arrow, contrary to statements made in testimony and in the media.
There you go. So Grush was never in touch with Arrow, representing the, what did he say he was? He was the co-lead of whatever it was, and he was, a representative of them to the UAP task force. But he certainly wasn't, he certainly didn't represent them talking to Arrow.
Here's what's kind of interesting, because I saw this come about a lot on the social media chatter, was that no one claimed to work for Arrow, and that is absolutely true as far as I'm aware. However, what I think many people misunderstood, and this is going to get into semantics, and I think both sides need to clarify this, it does go to the heart of what David Grush was stating. In his opening statement, you'll see here, let me see, yes, this line, I was my agency's co-lead, the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency. So he states, I was my agency's co-lead in unidentified anomalous phenomena and transmedium object analysis, as well as reporting to UAP Task Force and eventually Arrow. So Grush actually did make the claim that he was the representative to Arrow. So going back to Kirkpatrick's statement where he says they were ever a representative to Arrow, not of Arrow, but to Arrow, Dr. Kirkpatrick is pushing back on Grush's claims. That's how I read it anyway.
Yeah, I'd read it. I'd read it exactly the same way.
If you guys have a different idea, please, by all means, I'm not saying I'm 100% right here, but he's essentially...
No, I think he is.
He's saying that when Grush was with the NGA, and he claimed to be representing the NGA to Arrow, Kirkpatrick is saying, nope, nobody there, didn't name Grush by name, but he was the only one that made the claim, said nobody there was a representative to Arrow of their respective agencies. So, here we go again of one person saying...
Yeah, here we go again. Now, the other thing is, what was the last... What was the last bit of this? But somewhere in this, I think Dr. Kirkpatrick reiterates that Arrow does not have any alien materials, nor is he aware of any alien recovery, research, analysis programs in the past, something like that. Hang on, I'll just see if I can find out how. Okay, so we'll wrap it up with this. This was actually John Greenwald was reading this before he actually read out and highlighted the other bits that I've just shown you, but I should have probably included this before that, but I think this is the pertinent part of it that we're going to get to now. So this is a letter, remember, from or this is a statement from Dr. Kirkpatrick, the guy that runs Arrow, and he was very disappointed by what he saw, and he said he made Arrow look sort of delinquent or negligent or whatever. He sounds quite angry about it, and I don't blame him.
I'm deeply disappointed at the denigration of Arrow's dedicated men and women hailing from the Department of Defense, intelligence community, and civil partners who are pouring their hearts out working this issue on behalf of Congress. Arrow has the authorities and resources necessary to execute this mission to meet congressional intent. And as we've stated before, Arrow welcomes anyone with knowledge of any of these allegations or programs to talk to us in a safe, secure, and appropriately cleared environment. Rest assured, Arrow will follow the data wherever it leads. Finally, to be clear, Arrow has yet to find any credible evidence to support the allegations of any reverse engineering program for non-human technology. Also, to be clear, none of the whistleblowers from yesterday's hearing ever worked for Arrow or was ever a representative to Arrow, contrary to statements made in testimony and in the media.
Yeah, okay. So I think we'll leave it there. So Dr. Kirkpatrick is saying that anybody's free to go and tell Arrow about give Arrow any information they may have without any fear, and law enforcement is part of Arrow part of Arrow. So Arrow can call on law enforcement if somebody says, hey, I'll tell you this, but I've been threatened. They can deal with that. So anyone can go and tell Arrow that they've had this experience, or here's a piece of a flying saucer, whatever they want, without any fear of being murdered, beaten up, getting a visit from Jake and Elwood. Are you are you guys with Majestic 12? No, ma'am. We're musicians. Without any fear of any of that, and. So there's no issue. Anyone can go and give Arrow this information. This is their mission. And it also said that they have the authorities and resources necessary. So, okay, so that sort of suggests that saying that it's all classified isn't going to wash, because Arrow has the clearances to listen to this stuff, to anything they might have to say. And that, of course, is the important bit. This is from Dr. Kirkpatrick, the head of Arrow. Finally, to be clear, Arrow has yet to find any credible evidence to support the allegations of any reverse engineering program for non-human technology. Also, to be clear, none of the whistleblowers from yesterday's hearing ever worked for Arrow or was ever a representative to Arrow, contrary to statements made in testimony and in the media. Okay, I think I'll leave it there. As I said, I'll leave a link to this. This is if you're interested in this subject, this channel here is well worth subscribing to, Black Vault. And I'll leave a link to this so you can watch it in its entirety. As always, thanks for watching. Maybe I'll catch you again.